Hello, everybody. Welcome once again to Miami Life. I'm Jim Barry. And of course, this is the show where we tackle the hot topics and get up close with the difference makers here in South Florida. You know, I got my first job at age 13, working part-time after school at a deli. Well, some lawmakers in Tallahassee are looking to take child labor much farther than that. A bill on the table would allow kids to work longer hours and even do overnight shifts. Now, they'd make extra money, but some wonder if that would really be in the best interest of our kids. For the owner of this classic American soda fountain in Tallahassee, loosening restrictions on child labor makes some sense.
Getting that half-hour break exactly at 4 hours or exactly at the right time so we don't violate is really hard to schedule.
For other business owners, it raises alarms.
We just hope it's not going to lead to kids having to make a tough decision as to whether they need to work or they can do those, things that everybody wants to do when they're kids.
A bill making its way through the Florida legislature would allow 16 and 17-year-olds to work more than 8 hours on a day when school is scheduled the next day and work over 30 hours a week during the school year without mandated meal breaks. It also removes overnight work restrictions on 14 and 15-year-olds who are homeschooled, attend virtual school, or who have already graduated. Governor Ron DeSantis argues this will help fill positions left by deported migrants.
What's wrong with expecting our young people to be working part-time now? I mean, that's how it used to be when I was growing up.
Do you believe that this bill would have an impact on a child's development?
Absolutely, because we already are seeing high levels of absenteeism.
Sadaf Knight of the Florida Policy Institute says children can already work longer hours through a waiver process involving parents, guardians, or a school superintendent.
Parents are essentially being excluded from the process of the decision-making around how long and how much their kids work.
We're going to take a deep dive into this topic now with Daniel Tilley. He is the legal director for the American Civil Liberties Union of Florida. Daniel, the state may have a labor shortage now that it is cracking down on undocumented labor, but should kids be the one to replace them in the workforce?
This is really an astonishing set of bills. It's essentially setting current child labor protections on fire. And when we see so much instability in the world, we see trillions of dollars being evaporated from the economy, what we really need to be doing is preparing kids for what is right now an uncertain future, and the best way to do that is to ensure a strong education for kids. And let's just be real about why this is happening. It is, as you suggested, it is an attack on migrants to rid the state of so many people who are essential to the economy of the state, people who all work across so many sectors, particularly in agriculture and also construction, but across the entire economy. And the idea that teenagers are going to fill all these jobs is frankly just ridiculous.
Well, you heard what the governor said. He said he had a job as a kid, so what's wrong with kids working?
Look, I had a job. I worked at a county jail when I was 15 years old. I worked at Chick-fil-A. I worked at Olive Garden. I had jobs. That was fine. That was good. I wasn't working 40 hours a week at Chick-fil-A. I wasn't working till 3 a.m. at any of these places. It's critical that we have some protections in place. And the fact is, child labor violations in Florida have been steadily increasing since for the past decade, really. And so the idea that we should just further reduce the protections that already exist is preposterous.
What protections should be in place to protect kids?
Look, if we want to ensure kids are set up for success, there's lots of ways to do that. We could prioritize Medicaid expansion. We could prioritize giving families access to affordable housing. There's all sorts of things that we could do, but taking them out of school, essentially, or making them much less likely to be prepared for the future is just not the way to go. And
Florida's not the only state where this is on the table. From what I've read, there are at least 27 other states where this has become an issue. Why all of a sudden nationally has this become a hotbed thing?
I think it comes from this very deep anti-immigrant sentiment from the politicians in power of the current moment. They are doing whatever they can to drive people out of Florida, and it really doesn't make any sense. Let's look at some of the things that have been passed recently. An anti-immigrant bill that criminalizes re-entry to Florida for undocumented individuals. That was just put on hold by a federal judge when we and others recently began litigating that, there's a bill that creates a mandatory death penalty for certain undocumented individuals. And those are words I never thought in my life I would utter, mandatory death penalty. But the reality is we're not going to criminalize our way out of our problems, and we're not going to execute our way out of our problems. So we should be focusing on what we can do to ensure that communities and families thrive, not seek to destabilize them.
Let's talk about kids working, and of course there's also been an issue of kids taking jobs that are, frankly, should be just reserved for adults, like, say, dangerous construction jobs. So what protections could be in place to maybe allow kids to work more, but keep them away from employment situations that could be harmful to them?
For some of this stuff, it may just be enforcing the protections that already exist. Like I said, there's been an increasing number of Department of Labor violations, but do we think that the Department of Labor in this federal administration is really going to be cracking down on child labor violations? I don't think so. In fact, what we see in this drive for supposed government efficiency, and of course we all want efficiency, but what we see instead is that the dismantling of government watchdogs, the Office of Inspector General and all these different agencies are being completely removed. So if we want to hold government accountable, if we want government to do its job in making sure that people are following the law, you don't dismantle the government watchdog. So there's lots of things that we could do already, which is simply not further breaking the law.
How likely is it that this bill will gain some traction and move to the legislature and pass in Florida?
We're doing whatever we can to oppose it, but it is moving forward currently.
Wow. Do you see a trend here that, in essence, is going to create two classes of people, the educated and the uneducated, who don't have the opportunity to further their education because of laws like this?
It is the case that marginalized communities are going to be the ones who are most pressured into doing more work and taking time away from school. And so I think, yes, this is going to have a disproportionate impact on certain communities.
What should parents do if they have an issue with this?
Look, as was previously stated in the clip, there's carve-outs for these laws already, where if kids truly need to be engaged in work that their parents strongly believe in, and they can make that work, there's ways to get approval for that.
Gotcha. Daniel Tilley, thank you for stopping by.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate you so much. All right, still ahead on Miami Life this afternoon. We've got other stories to tell you about, including the story of building a basketball dynasty. We'll talk to the architect of Nova Southeastern University's history-making men's hoops team. They just won it all again. Plus, hurricanes, bankruptcy, and even war. The University of Miami had to overcome all of that and more on its way to becoming a world-class institution. That story with Miami Life comes right back.
Cheatham driving, gets it up, ball's loose, tipped, Nova Southeastern, national champions again!
What a story, what a finish. The Nova Southeastern University Sharks, once again kings of Division II basketball. The team clinched another national championship and a 74-73 nail-biter to cap a 36-1 season. Wow, that's almost a perfect season, Coach Jim Crutchfield, but it had a perfect ending, didn't it?
Well, you know, it didn't feel perfect at the time. It was kind of tense, but yeah, it was. You know, when you win a championship like that, it's a great feeling.
It has to be. Our person of interest is the head coach of the Sharks, Jim Crutchfield. Welcome to Miami Life. And I saw you watching that clip intently, and it's almost like you were wondering, man, is that shot going to go in this time?
Yeah, yeah. Because obviously, you know, the year before we experienced the other end of that. Mm-hmm. A guy made a tougher shot, you know, from the corner, and it was a shot that he had to change the trajectory. And when he shot it, I thought, there's no way that ball's going in. We're going to overtime. But it went in.
Yeah.
What was that old ABC, the agony of defeat? That's what we experienced that. And this is the other end of it right here.
Yeah, and what a thrill it is for you and your players. And certainly, you can really tell how close-knit this team is. Tell me about this team and what made it special.
You know, I mean, the two guys holding the trophy there have been around for years. You know, the one guy, his college is different now. They stick around a little bit longer. They have red shirt years and COVID years, and some of the guys I'd had for 6 years. But, you know, they bonded well as a team, and I think it carries over. I think guys that are good off the court together are good on the court together. And in today's landscape, sometimes it's tough to get that type of camaraderie where the team is the focus, not an individual. And with these guys, the team was the focus.
And that's so important. What has this done for the school in general?
I think Nova Southeastern was kind of an incredible academic university that no one really was aware of. And I think it's increased the awareness of the school. I mean, there's some great things going on. You know, probably health sciences and things like that at our university are huge. But you know, they're not the front porch sometimes to university, but a basketball program can be.
Sure.
And you know, all of a sudden you're live on CBS in front of a million people, and people see the basketball team, and sometimes they say, well, what's this school all about? And the further they investigate, you find out it's a great institution.
Yeah, in fact, I've been there to the robotics lab, and some of the things that are happening there are just really phenomenal. Talk to me about college basketball. You know, I covered sports for a long, long time. The landscape is so different now. NIL has just really changed the game. And frankly, sometimes I wonder if it's changed it in a good way. What do you think?
From a coaching standpoint, it's in a bad way. You know, if you ask I haven't heard one coach say, boy, I like this new NIL structure, you know, where we're giving players money, and I have to choose which player gets amount of money. Now there's some players that are liking it. I would
don't
too.
blame them.
I don't blame them either. You know, all of a sudden you see how much money. I'm shocked at the amount of money that's going through, and now it's not just, you know, some players getting $1 million. It's become widespread. The number of players getting $100,000, $200,000, $500,000.
And to be clear, it's not just D1 players getting it, it's also players at Division II.
It's trickled down to D2. And sometimes it's trickled down in a matter of D2 schools are starting to give small NIL offers, but also D2 schools are losing their players to NIL to small D1s. And 2 years ago, we won the national championship, and I'm in the locker room with our players, and I have 4 starters coming back. They're screaming, we're coming back next year. And I thought we might be. 2 weeks later, they were gone. Right. All, you know, and to major universities.
So are they still student athletes, or are they athlete students now?
We don't talk a lot about academics anymore. I hate to say that, but a lot of these transfers, academics doesn't really enter in the picture. I rarely hear anybody say, because that also is a better academic situation for me. I know that's not the way it should be, but these guys in the portal and the amount of money, and the NI deal comes first, athletics comes first, academics is on the back burner.
I saw something in the Washington Post not long ago, a small school, St. Francis, that was Division I for many years, and they decided, we give up. We're going from D1 to D3, no scholarships, no NIL, but their rationale was that, you know what, this is really taking us back to what the student-athlete experience is supposed to be. Do you worry sometimes that it's skewed too far the other direction, that these kids who are playing collegiate sports are losing that collegiate experience?
A little bit, yes. And they're also moving from school to school so fast that you don't have that identity with the student body, where, you know, it's not someone you see in class for 4 years, and they're no longer part of the student body. They're kind of hired guns that have come in to win basketball or football games. But I think the college experience for them is different than maybe you experienced or I experienced a couple years ago. I think you're right. It hasn't changed the experience. But some would say for them, it's for the better. You know, I've seen some of the deals these guys have signed, and it's a lot of money.
Yeah, makes you want to see if you got some eligibility left to play again, huh? Well, listen, you've done a fantastic job with them, and we've got the hardware here to prove it. Where's this trophy going to go at school, by the way?
I don't know. I'm not much of a trophy guy. I don't give out awards myself. So I see they have a big glass case. When you come into the coaching area, it'll sit in there somewhere, but that's a piece of hardware. Our guys got memories that are much more valuable.
Absolutely, and you are certainly a big part of that. Coach, congratulations again.
Thank you, Jim.
Jim Crutchfield, and we look forward to you coming back and celebrating the next time you win it.
I hope you're right.
All righty. Still to come, the story of the U, 100 years in the making.
To me, it's been my whole life.
Hank Tester brings us the story of how a devastating natural disaster helped give birth to a world-class university in the heart of Coral Gables. Welcome back. The University of Miami celebrated its 100th anniversary this week. CBS News Miami's Hank Tester gives us a history lesson on the turbulent beginnings that you had to overcome to become the nationally renowned school that we all know today.
It was born in the midst of South Florida's first real estate boom. Almost went under when that boom went bad. Followed by the Great Miami Hurricane of 1926 that flattened the area. Yet, the dream of a university in Coral Gables prevailed. The University of Miami chartered April the 8th, 1925. Cornerstone dedicated February 4th, 1926.
The university almost didn't happen.
The University of Miami, the brainchild of Coral Gables developer George Merrick and transplanted Floridian former U.S. Senator William Jennings Bryan. They envisioned a university that would serve South Florida. In the short run, not much happened.
We were able to get through it, and the rest is history, as they say.
Classes taught in leased hotels, a bankruptcy, students going door to door asking for donations to keep the university afloat.
I got out in May of '46, but they all started pouring in.
They were the World War II veterans, backed by the GI Bill. Holmes Braddock, one of those veterans. The war over, 1946, the vets and their GI Bill monies stabilized the university's finances.
To me, it's been my whole life. So my mother actually graduated, I think, in 1946 when she was 45 years old.
So your mom went to the UM and you went to the UM?
Yeah, my oldest son's graduated UM.
Spirit and tradition for sure. There was football and academics. Football put the U on the national map.
By '83, we, of course, surprised everybody by winning our first national championship.
Which brought an increase in enrollment, students attracted to a campus where the winter weather was wonderful and the beach not far away. But academics did kick in.
It propelled us to really attract more academically motivated students, honors students.
And that momentum continues to this day with the university's involvement in U Health.
And I also think now, like, the health system has really put us in a great position.
So what would the university founders say 100 years later? What if George Merrick could see the campus?
Oh my God. I don't know if his imagination could imagine this even, because for what it's grown to, and its national stature.
Well, that's the story of the U. George Merrick would be so proud. 100 years of history. I'm Hank Tester, CBS News, Miami. And it is a great story. The U, a small school that has always dreamed big, and it is continuing to do big things. All right, staying in Coral Gables, there's a big push now to save South Florida's beloved sea cows, the manatees. Casey Sherman tells us about a new effort to save these gentle giants.
On any given winter day, chances are you'll spot a manatee, like this one, in the warm waters of the Coral Gables Mahi Canal. In the height of winter, dozens of manatees flock there to seek refuge from the cold. But Denise Carvalho, who lives along the canal, worries that there won't be any manatees there for much longer.
They're building from that area with the trees all the way up to the US 1, and it's going to be from 13 floors up, from 9 to 13 floors, and up to 190 feet tall.
The building she's talking about is for the proposed Gables Waterway development, a project that will horseshoe around the Mahi Canal. If it gets approved, the development will replace an existing 3-story building and other low-rise structures.
With all these that they want to build, there's going to be debris, there is going to be water shading, which is going to make them, the temperature of the water is going to get lower. So it's not going to be a safe spot for them anymore.
I spoke with Tiare Frederick, a manatee biologist for the Save the Manatee Club, about that.
The Mahi Canal, or the Coral Gables Waterway, is the only primary warm water refuge in the entire county. So it is the most important, one of the most important, if not the most important location during the wintertime for manatees in Miami-Dade County.
Tiare is most concerned about the added foot traffic.
There are other areas of the state where, when the traffic of people, recreation has picked up, manatees have left and gone somewhere else. We see them do it regularly.
The project still needs to be submitted to and approved by the Coral Gables Planning and Zoning Board. CBS News Miami reached out to the Coral Gables Assistant Director of Development Services, who responded in part that, quote, because it has not been submitted, it would be too premature for the city to comment. Of course, we'll stay on top of it for you. In Coral Gables, I'm meteorologist Casey Sherman.
Thank you, Casey, and we'll be right back after this. Up next week in Miami Life, our latest installment of what we call Side Hustle. Miami native Ernie Rodriguez's day job is in the tire business, but when he's out of the office, he embraces his creative side with very unique artwork inspired by Miami's one-of-a-kind culture. There's Ernie going to work. Tune in for a new Side Hustle to see the tire salesman show us his artistic side next week on Miami Life. That's a wrap for this week's show, though. Don't forget, we'll see you every Thursday for Miami Life at 6:30 on the stream. You can also watch all Miami Life episodes on demand on our YouTube channel. I'm Jim Berry. Thanks for joining us today. Hope to see you soon.